Hi, I'm Frtiz and Yvette. I'm the CEO of ITS Partners here in, believe it or not, snow-covered Grand Rapids, Michigan. So however good or bad you got it in your shelter in place, you probably don't have an inch of snow on the ground. So I guess that's April in Michigan. So with me today, I have Yvette Matthews. Now, Yvette is a member of the ITS leadership team. She's the VP of Services. And in addition to that really complex job, she's a nationally recognized subject matter expert in IT asset management. And she's a practitioner. She sat in your chair and done your job at some very big organizations. She's a vocal advocate of doing it the right way and not taking shortcuts. But you know, what I really love about Yvette, it's her ability to help people find their way in this space. She really cares about her customers. She has the ability to look at a unique organization and then give them the practical guidance that they need to move forward. And she does it with balance, kind of best practice balanced with the reality of your situation. You know, she's someone you want on your team, and she's also been my primary mentor for several years on all things asset management. So good morning, Yvette.
Good morning, Frtiz. Thanks for having me join your webinar today.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're here. You instill confidence in me in this topic, so thank you. Look, today's webinar title is Managing Assets for a Mobile Workforce Using ServiceNow. You know, and like Rachel said, if you find today's discussion valuable, we got another one coming up that's going to be more focused on the CMDB on May 6th. Ask you to tune into that. And also, if you get value out of today, tell a friend about us. Tell a friend about this series because we're going to keep doing this. So the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to be clear about what we're discussing today. So Yvette, can you give us a simple description of IT asset management?
Absolutely. So asset management is making sure we understand the physical, financial, and contractual information around our assets. So knowing what we have and understanding how we can use it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that clarity. You know, this is sort of like the pilot announcing the flight destination or the loudspeaker. You know, we want to make sure everybody's on the right webinar and knows what we're talking about. Actually, one time I did see someone stand up after that announcement was made. I don't know how that can possibly happen, but it did. So, Yvette, can you also give us some clarity around the types of IT assets that we're going to be talking about today? I mean, we use terms like remote assets, mobile assets. You know, what's the correct lexicon, the correct language, and how are these different from just regular old assets?
So if we think about it, we're taking our regular old assets that we're used to dealing with on premise for the most part, and we've sent them home with people. So what we're talking about in this case is understanding what devices employees are using. Are these devices that maybe have never been used in a work from home environment? Maybe they're not configured quite as well as we thought they were. Employees could be using devices that we're not aware of. So maybe you've added some bring your own device for your work from home. And we may need to talk about some things around software licensing for those. Do the devices check into the network on a regular basis? So those are some of the remote assets that we're talking about. So we just want to make sure that we're not just talking about mobile devices. We're talking about pretty much anything you would use in your regular everyday job. You've just taken it home to use it there.
Great. Thanks, Yvette. It's important to understand really, you know, exactly what we are talking about. So we've seen a lot of organizations kind of dig into this whole ITAM or managing assets for their mobile workforce during this shelter period. You know, projects, we're not seeing projects being delayed, some, but not a lot. Actually, we're seeing a lot that people are moving kind of to the front of the queue. What do you make of that observation, Yvette?
I think what people are realizing is they don't have as great a control over their assets as they thought they did. And when they sent our users or their users home, they lost control of what the people were using to do their job. Or maybe they sent them home without the correct items in order to do their job. So now that they're trying to understand this landscape they've created, they've determined, oh my, maybe we didn't have the processes in place we probably should have before we started this activity. And maybe now it's time to focus on that. So let's move forward and make sure we build a better program going forward.
Hey, I agree. You know, this whole event kind of got the ball rolling, this unexpected event. And then it kind of seems like people quickly realize that they need better foundational workloads, better real-time telemetry about IT and about their business. You know, that's exactly what ServiceNow can provide if you've achieved this appropriate level of maturity. So that's what we're going to discuss today. And we just want to keep a couple things in mind. One is, this really isn't about scare tactics. Let's get that out of our heads. You know, hopefully the worst of the chaos is in the rearview mirror and we can focus on the challenges ahead. You know, also keep in mind, this isn't a new set of workloads for the team here at ITS. This isn't something we threw together post-COVID. This has been our passion for 20 years. It's what we're focused on in the ServiceNow ecosystem. We don't do everything, but the things we do, and especially these workloads, we do great. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning. And that's what today's discussion is about. Figuring out what's urgent and what's important regarding your remote assets. It's about figuring out how we can enable more mature asset management in your organization. Look, 2 months ago, 5 weeks ago, however long it's been, the business case for asset management was incredibly strong. I mean, there's a list of things of use cases that save the organization money as long as your arm. And you know what? Today, that list is even longer. It's even stronger. And that's what this is about today. Today is about solving for those immediate needs, and it's also about building asset maturity into your organization over the long term. So we have an interesting audience today. We have 145 people attending the session. We know some of them, so we know there's organizations on today that have multiple levels of ITAM maturity represented. We know we kind of have strong representation from healthcare, finance, insurance, and energy. We also have lots of personas: asset managers, program owners, security folks, IT, leadership. So we're going to try to make sure there's something in the next 20 or 25 minutes the discussion for everybody. And what we're hoping that everybody takes away from this is, first of all, clarity on the challenges of managing these assets. We want you to have some ideas you can use and some actions you can take right now, things that you can start thinking about or doing this afternoon. We want you to understand about how remote asset management fits into your broader asset management strategy. And we want to help you understand, how do you move forward? You know, what do you do? What are the next steps? Some of the key points that kind of form the foundation for this presentation is, look, the world has changed. We're going to talk about that. And I know that's a challenge, and it's been a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. Another key point, software asset management, you know what? It's the answer to several of the challenges that organizations are facing. And we don't like to be salesy, but for people on this call, I'm just going to say that likely means SAMP. If you don't own it, you need to be looking at it and making the business case for it. If you do own it, it needs to be implemented. It needs to be installed. And if installed, we need to make sure it's working right. And then finally, it's that idea of figuring out where to go forward, how to move forward. Finally, before we get into this discussion, some use cases to think about. It's the productivity use case. Do you know if all your users have the right hardware and software entitlements needed for work from home? And not just for survive work from home, but thrive work from home. Accounting for assets that are possibly outside your established process. You know, they got to be reconciled at some point. So financial compliance. Another use case is ensuring software compliance for remote workers. That's an external compliance factor. And then finally is maybe a new concept of asset management's role in maintaining what may be new compliance measures put forth by your risk team for work from home. This might be a new element of your business continuity planning. So that's security compliance. So let's kick off the discussion. We're going to use the context of this forced work from home event that we have to kind of frame our discussion. And let's start by discussing some of those organizations and the experiences for people on the less mature side of the scale around IT asset management. Yvette, how were those organizations impacted through this, and what challenges did they face?
Well, a lot of those less mature organizations are facing a lack of visibility into what they own, meaning they're not sure what went home with some of their workers. They may not know what they need to do from a software perspective or who is using what enabling software. They may also not have an idea of what it's going to cost to become compliant again now that all the folks are working from home. If we think about the help desk for those challenges right now, if we don't have good asset data, meaning I don't know who's using what devices or what devices are even out there, when people are calling into the help desk, it's making it more difficult to help them resolve the issues because they don't have any sort of data to work from. They're kind of filling it out on the fly. Leadership may be struggling to understand some of the risk because, again, we can't manage what we don't know. So if I don't know what you have, I can't make sure I have all of the measures in place to contain the risk associated with that. The end users, so all of those people who are working from home, they may have been impacted if we don't have good processes in place to help them get what they need in order to work from home. They're going to be feeling like they don't have the appropriate support from the organization in order to be successful working from home. So really what it comes down to is, do we have the right tools and the right software that people need to do their job in this new environment?
Great, thanks. You know, in the very worst cases, there was chaos on top of chaos, and that's not a good thing. And, you know, we saw some teams that really had to rally and do things in a very manual or ad hoc way, you know, just to be successful in the short term. So for some of these less mature teams, you know, I think the question that must be most top of mind is, what are things we can do right now? What are things we can do to start to make things better? What are some solutions?
Well, let's talk about some quick wins that people could do today. So we could start by analyzing our current knowledge about what we have. So what devices and what software do we have? If we don't have any knowledge about our devices or it's minimal, we need to look at different ways that we can get better visibility. So for example, I might use something like my endpoint management tool, like Altiris or SCCM, something that's agent-based, to determine who the last logged on user is for a particular device. That gives me some understanding of who's using the device at least, if not how they're using it. We may want to look at our software licensing that we have today to ensure that we're using it in a way that is compliant with the contract we've signed with our vendor. So is how you've deployed the software and where the users are using the software compliant with the terms and conditions of your software licenses. I would suggest a quick win of developing a report about your hardware that's being used to show when it's reported in. So for example, if my devices that I send home with our new work from home group, haven't reported back in 15 days, I need to question how it's being used. Is it lost? Is there something going on we need to understand? One thing to remember is when you're doing these sort of deep dives into how people are using software, make sure that you're following your local legislation if there is some, or your regional or countrywide legislation to make sure you're not picking up data about end users that you're not allowed to have. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. I would suggest a quick win would be updating your service desk scripts right now to ask for relevant asset information if they aren't already. So when a user calls in, ensuring that you're capturing who the user is and any asset relevant information around the device, such as the serial number, the asset tag if there is one, the type of device, etc. I would start tracking who you're giving devices to upon deployment. So filling out that assigned to field manually, and then ensuring that your tools, if you have some running in the background that are populating data on a regular basis, aren't overwriting that assigned to with something programmatic. You can always capture that programmatic information in another field, such as primary user for SCCM can be captured on the CI as opposed to populating the assigned to. This lets me create a report that tells me if there's a difference between the primary user and the assigned to, because that tells me maybe my processes aren't working or someone's not following them. I would start tracking my software use rights. If you're not today, I would suggest setting up the SAM application and ensuring that as you allocate use rights to people, especially in this remote environment, that you're determining who you're giving the licensing to, where they're, and what device they're going to be using it on. Capturing that sort of information gives you a better picture into your compliance position, and it's something that you can start doing today. Eventually, I would suggest automating some of that through the service catalog, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but those would be some of the quick wins. Now, remember, a lot of our software is moving to a cloud-based SaaS environment, and the SAM Professional tool will allow us to bring in those SaaS information, so we can not only see for some of our publishers who we've assigned a use right to, but we'll actually can see if they're actually using it. So we may see some cost savings as a benefit of some of these quick wins of configuring, say, just the SaaS application if we don't have a good handle on the rest of our software environment. Those are just some things that people could do right away that would help them be to get some quick wins and maybe help get a little bit more control over their asset environment.
Hey, thank you. So, my comment on that is, I always go to the little bigger picture, and, I hope asset managers are also going out and trying to find new allies in the businesses to get the resources that we really need to do the foundational things that make all parts of IT work and ultimately help build that maturity around IT asset management. So that's a great discussion. But we know a lot of the teams out there that we work with do have established more mature asset management. And usually that mean things like maybe they're doing a lot of work in conjunction with their CMDB team. Discovery is auto-populating. They're doing hardware asset management. Maybe they have SAMP. So for those more mature teams, Yvette, what advantages did you see that they had during this current forced work from home event?
Well, the nice thing is they had the biggest advantage is they had a pretty good idea of what they owned. So they probably knew who was using what hardware, who was using what software. They understood their current license position and understood what new licensing they would need to procure and able to enable a remote worker. So did they need new WebEx licenses? Did they need new licenses for a Citrix environment if we weren't going to let them take their actual workstations home? There's a lot of things that they knew better than because they had control. So they also understood probably what new security risks they might be facing. They were able to respond faster when requests came in to the help desk. So overall, I think they gave those people who are working from home a sense of confidence in their IT organization that it could support them while they were in this new, probably unfamiliar environment for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I love that last point. I mean, we know that IT workers are some of the smartest. I mean, I believe that in the organization. And, mature organizations who are ready for this and responded, built that confidence, not only with their end users, but also with their leadership. And I think those are the kind of things that really, are kind of the catalyst for a lot of IT transformation. On a more specific story, I heard last week, we had a customer who's making the maturity journey, doing a good job. And she told me about how impressed the organization was with their ability to have the help desk work remote and support remote workers. Actually, it was so effective, the organization was questioning why they wouldn't take both the cost and cultural benefits of moving that function to permanent work from home. So again, another good example of a bad event, but people that were ready, they found advantage in it. So, and I think some of the maturity work, we helped with that customer, help set that up. But Yvette, what are other things that we're doing right now to help customers?
Well, some of the main things we're doing is we're helping them build out their processes to help support these remote workers. So helping them build out processes around direct deployment of workstations to end users. For example, if I send an end user a device, I don't really have any other way other than them telling me it's there that it got there. Because my vendor could say that they shipped it, they could say they left it on the porch, or the end user signed for it. But what if I never see it on my network? Then there's a problem. So the process I may help them develop could be something as simple as creating a catalog item once it's been marked as received, so that the end user can go in and essentially say, yep, I have it, it's here. And there may be some actions tied to your field services team in order to activate that machine. But it gives you a better grasp on what's there than just expecting that I shipped it, it's there, and then finding out a week later that your end user still doesn't have a machine. Other things that we've done is helping configure the ServiceNow tools in order to enable a remote work environment. Some of this functionality that we help build works whether they're remote or not, but it helps in a remote environment because there isn't a help desk person or field services person to stand at their desk and assist them. So there may be something as simple, let's talk software. For my customers that use SAM Professional, they have the option of having client software distribution configured. If they're using SCCM, what I may do is help them develop a catalog request for a piece of software that's packaged. Once it's approved, then we've configured the tool to look to see if there's any available allocations available. I might automate the assignment of allocation to the end user, and then using client software distribution, trigger SCCM to actually deploy the software to the end user. Notice there's not a lot of touching involved during this process. It's a lot of automation that gives a better experience to the end user and frees up the asset management team to do some more value-added activity rather than just approving software and then having the SCCM team push it to a device. It can all be done programmatically. So Frtz, we've told people people have been told they have to work from home now. So as an asset risk and IT leader, what are some likely scenarios of things that people should be thinking of now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I got a few things that come to mind about future challenges or, how the world has changed. So one is this idea is that, hey, the change cycle is speeding up. And I kind of mean that in two ways. One is to get through this chaotic period or crisis, people were putting things through change on a daily basis, right? I also mean in a less traditional sense, people are moving things up. I mean, things that organizations were doing that they were maybe looking to 2021 or 2022 all of a sudden have priority, and they need to get them done in quarters or months instead of years, because this type of event has really exposed, one, some of the problems, and two, some of the advantages that a platform like ServiceNow could bring. Also, a lot of organizations, like my story, are going to find advantage in work from home and decide they want it to be a key part of their strategy going forward. We have a story at ITS. One of our core values is work and life and balance, and we put a lot of value on that. And so a year ago, we decided to go to a fully remote implementation strategy. And we did it to keep engineers off the road, right? We did it mostly for the cultural aspects. And I think as people stay at home I think there's just aspects of that work-life balance that they're not going to want to give up, and companies are going to want to afford them. So I think trying to find a way to enable that is going to be a future challenge in a regular kind of way. I also think that this concept of, in addition to business continuity planning, and maybe some teams were really ahead of this whole thing, but I think there's a lot of risk teams and risk managers that are going to demand better risk visibility and compliance for both choice and forced work from home. So those are kind of three things that I see: speed, work from home as a strategy, and work from home business continuity planning going forward that may be a change. So, part of my role is to be the collective intelligence for my team, for the company, and maybe even a little bit for the ecosystem. And identify some of those things, but certainly the technical people like Yvette, how are you going to help customers solve for these new challenges? What are the next steps?
Well, think about it this way. Asset management isn't just counting widgets. It's knowing and managing our physical, financial, and contractual obligations. So that didn't end because those devices left the premises. So we need to ensure that we know what we have so we can mitigate risk and reduce costs. And the more we know, the more opportunity we have to save and the more opportunity we have to mitigate risks. So for all those organizations using the ServiceNow platform, the financial and business case for these foundational IT workloads are very compelling. Even when you don't consider the changing work from home landscape, this is just one more example of why we have to do this work and solve for these issues. It's not going to change. If we think about new things that happen all the time, you're going to have Internet of Things, mergers and acquisitions are going to happen. And these are some of the critical reasons why we have to do ITAM and become more mature with our ITAM programs. One of the things to think about, for instance, it should be paying for SAMP with our IT asset management programs cost savings. So when you're doing your ITAM program, what we found is the majority of people do find immediate cost savings. So you can help mature your software asset management program by setting up SAMP and getting better handle on your software licensing, as opposed to keeping it in spreadsheets where we're really not seeing any programmatic or automatic cost savings. I would start right now by helping people analyze their current state. Do they have asset management expertise in-house? A lot of people do. They may not know who they are. For example, do you have people tracking information on your assets, say in a spreadsheet or in a separate tool? Do you know how much you've been spending on your software licensing? Is it centralized? Did you fail an audit or maybe not pass as well as you thought you should? Once you take a look at your current state, you want to build a picture or a roadmap of where you would like to be. If you don't have the expertise in-house to get there, I would determine where you could get more help. So either partnering with a consulting company like ITS or working with peers that are in the same state or maybe the same vertical as you and figuring out what they're doing well and trying to see if you can adopt some of those practices in your own organization. Just some basic ways for you to start moving forward with your asset program. So Fritz, do you have any final words for our audience today?
Of course I do. So two quick things. One is look, I'm not the smartest technical person in my organization. I'm the collective intelligence, and I like to do that for customers as well. And one of the challenges I have with work from home is I can't be visiting customers. I can't be seeing several ServiceNow people every week. So look, if you have input for me, reach out to me. I'm sure in the follow-up, we can have my email, my phone number. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I really want to hear what's going on out there. I want to hear what the challenges are. I want to hear what solutions people are working on, because I want to help all of our customers kind of get the benefit of the collective intelligence of this whole ITS ecosystem. And then finally, I'll say, and I'm kind of a broken record, I'm going to continue to advocate for this idea that ServiceNow, customers, ITS, we need to continue to drive this discussion and collaboration between asset management, IT, security, compliance, the BU, and a whole host of others. Look, we have an amazing business case to present that ultimately leads to a transformation of IT. And I'll tell you, I'd love to help you build that business case. So thank you for joining.